always waiting for some bad man to save you. I am Catwoman. Hear me roar.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Honey, I'm home! I forgot. I'm not married.
Greetings and salutations, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, VInfuso. And the last time you joined me on this Batman retrospective, I upset a lot of people by admitting that I personally didn't really care for Tim Burton's Batman. But the thing is when I said I didn't like Tim Burton's Batman, I was talking about the movie Tim Burton's Batman. The truth of the matter is, I actually love Tim Burton's Batman Returns. Like the last movie, I have a bunch of conflicting emotions with this one, so right now I'm gonna bat dance you through them. But I want to go on record right now at the beginning of this video and say, this is one of my all-time favorite Batman movies. And I actually happen to think that it's overall the best Batman movie that's ever been made. Also, the movie came out in 1992. I came out in 1992. Coincidence? Absolutely, there's no correlation there whatsoever. Like I said with the last movie, Tim Burton's overall style is pretty ideal for the atmosphere of Gotham City. But even more so here than in the last one. I feel like much more than in Batman 1989, we now have an intimate understanding of this city. We're shown more of it, from the streets of Gotham to its literal criminal underworld. The city more than ever really takes on its own personality here. The setting acts like a visual manifestation of the tone of the story. This dark and gothic look complements our titular hero in ways I don't think have ever properly been duplicated. The world it builds is a world that I can absolutely see a Batman in. I can't state enough just how great this is. Like these movies, I have a very complicated relationship with Tim Burton. The thing about Tim Burton is that when he adapts any original source material, he's gonna completely alter it to his liking. I'll put it to you like this. If Tim was a contractor, he'd take 2 pieces of the blueprint and then throw the rest of it out to do whatever the f he thought of at that moment. And you have something that looked like this. And of course, like many nerds, I prefer when things stick to the original script. At least spiritually. The events don't have to stay the exact same, but I kind of feel like the characters should. I like Tim Burton, but I hate when he's handed someone else's work. Because I know that the end result will look almost nothing like what it did in the beginning.
You maniac! You blew it! Oh, damn you!
I personally cannot, and will not, and frankly shall not, forgive the man for what he did to Alice in Wonderland. Twice! But if you think for 1 second I'm gonna completely besmirch the man who brought us Big Fish and Beetlejuice, then you're batshit crazy.
I see what you did there.
I absolutely hated the changes he made to the Joker character in the previous movie. They restricted how much I could actually truly appreciate the character in Jack Nicholson's performance. He recreated a classic villain by completely disassembling him. But on the other side of that coin, I love what he's done to the villains of Batman Returns. The Penguin and Catwoman could hardly be any different from their panel-to-panel counterparts. In the comics, the Penguin was a filthy rich socialite entrepreneur. By which I mean he was usually a thief who appreciated the arts. He liked the finer things in life. Now compare that to the sewer-dwelling creature that looks like he came out of The Hills Have Eyes. The Penguin was always a short, stocky, pointy-nosed man that I guess you could say resembled a bird. Most notably a penguin.
You are a big, fat, flightless bird!
Right, those are all. Those are all.
Yeah,
I mean, just the sort of the general.
Whatever.
But he wasn't, you know, actually a penguin. The guy wasn't born with flippers. A beak, maybe, but definitely not flippers. The two share very little in common outside their names and aliases. And yet, still to this day, this is one of the best interpretations we've ever gotten of the character. Danny DeVito is terrifying here. The guy is pure nightmare fuel. He is significantly more sinister than the villain that came before him. This is a much more dark and gritty and slimy character than the superhero movie genre was used to at the time. Hell, come to think of it, even in today's day and age, where a lot of comic book movies are made with a darker tone, I don't know if we've ever gotten a darker, grosser villain than this. He's everything you'd hate in a person, so therefore he's everything you'd hope to find in a good villain. He's a sleazy pervert, a malicious, vicious oaf, a disgusting dwarf, an unlikable dirtbag. When I was younger watching this, I genuinely had a hard time even looking at the Penguin. And now that I'm older, I find myself unable to look away. Danny DeVito completely loses himself in the role, and really connects with his inner Frank Reynolds. A full 14 years before he'd show up on It's Always Sunny in Philly. I'm not one to talk about effects a lot in these videos, but I gotta say, the Penguin effects are pretty perfect. For the most part. Maybe not the hands. Maybe not the hands. But the facial prosthetics blend in perfectly with Danny DeVito's face. It's seamless. It looks realistic. Even now, watching this in 4K, it just looks real. Again, face-wise. In terms of the pillowy body and condom gloves that he wore to give the illusion of flippers, maybe not so much, but the face! I loved Danny DeVito when I was younger due to movies like Matilda, Throw Mama from the Train, and Man on the Moon. But I still didn't recognize that this was him until a couple years after seeing this for the first time. Despite this not being the character's original depiction, I think that for a lot of people, this is the Penguin. This is still what a lot of people think when they think of the character. Comics and even animated series such as The Batman and Batman the Animated Series have recycled elements from this version of the character, so it definitely had some staying power. One of the weirdest elements about this version of the character, though, is that his gang of misfits are circus performers, which I think would be much more fitting for, I don't know, the Joker? Look, I don't want to be a backseat creator here, but, maybe put the clowns with the Clown Prince of Crime? Actually, now that I'm saying all this out loud, the Penguin in the comics was usually surrounded by or associated with the mob, whereas the Joker was usually surrounded by carnies, so, it just seems like on paper you should have switched those two. It probably would have made more sense and worked out better. But then again, maybe that wouldn't work for this version of the character. I can't really see him working with the Mafia. Actually, I can't really see him working with anybody. Other than actual penguins, of course. Also, not much like her original self is this movie's version of Catwoman.
Meow.
At least in terms of the character's origin. Typically, Selina Kyle, much like the Penguin, is a thief. Except where he has a fondness for birds, she has a love and obsession with cats. Usually, she's strong-willed, quick-witted, athletically inclined, highly intelligent, and morally ambiguous. Costume or not, that's Selina Kyle. But Batman Returns takes a different approach to the character. Here, she's just a lowly secretary.
Lowly assistant.
When we first see her outside of her costume, she's a shy, fragile loner who is typically overlooked or just laughed off. But it's amazing what death does for a woman. In ways that I still to this day can't fully understand or properly articulate, but I'm gonna try. Selina is gifted 8 additional lives due to a bunch of stray cats licking her wounds after she was pushed to her death out of a building. Did you get that? Because I didn't. And don't tell me that they explain it in the Halle Berry Catwoman movie. That is not canon, and I am not gonna watch it.
Midnight knew your fate. That's why she tested you, to see if you were worthy of a gift she could give you. A gift that could change your life.
While the movie wasn't exactly true to the character's background, it was still very true to the character. At least, as soon as she put those cat ears on. After her alleged death, she becomes the Catwoman comic book fans come to know and love. The larger-than-life personality, whip and catsuit included. It's still to this day my favorite rendition of the character, from the aesthetically pleasing stitched-up suit, to the way Michelle Pfeiffer expertly delivers her lines. I don't think we're ever going to get a better Catwoman. Anne Hathaway came close. She came pretty close, I'm not going to lie. I had some doubts, she did a good job. But this is Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, come on! She just about checks off every box on the Catwoman list. Seductive, manipulative, charming, intimidating, headstrong.
Naked, sexual, charisma.
She's got it all. She's all that. Despite her villainous status, this movie truly makes you root for her character, and her relationship with Bruce Wayne. I complained in my Batman 1989 movie review that there really didn't seem to be a whole lot of chemistry between Kim Basinger's Vicky Vale and Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne, but that's absolutely not an issue here whatsoever. The chemistry is there, and it's very much evident. The second we see these two share the screen together, there it is. We can almost physically see the sparks that are flying. Their back and forth banter and the scenes in which we just see these two characters carry out ordinary conversations are highly entertaining. Scenes like these could be seen as filler or the moments that you could take a piss break without having to pause the movie, because you're not going to miss much. But that's not the case here. Their every interaction is fun to watch, and the relationship the two establish helps build both characters up. It's beneficial for all parties, especially the audience. We learn more about both of them from them having spent screen time with each other. We see where the duality of both these characters compare, contrast, and completely conflict. I think Bruce says it best at the end. They're the same, cut straight down the middle. But what he doesn't understand is that those two halves are two opposing sides. The test audiences actually loved the pairing so much that they pretty much demanded that the character be kept alive after a final death in the movie. That final scene where we see that Catwoman survived wasn't in the original cut. And that isn't Michelle Pfeiffer, but instead a stand-in that they got to reshoot the movie's ending, giving the movie a much more open ending and a much more satisfying one as well. I believe they also did this so this way the character could be reused in the then upcoming Tim Burton Catwoman movie, and the plan was also to eventually reunite her with Batman. Unfortunately, as time would tell, that's not exactly how things turned out. But I still think the movie made the right decision with going with this ending. It's much more narratively satisfying. Despite her turn to the dark side early on, we constantly see Selina's before and after fighting for control of her present. There's a very human side to her that would love to stay with Bruce, that would love to live a normal life, but there's also that other side of her that remembers how well having a normal life worked out for her previously. The constant infighting just adds to the tragedy that is Catwoman.
Who the hell do you think you are?
I don't know anymore, Bruce.
And even after she seemingly got what she wanted, it leads the audience to wonder, but did she though? The most understated villain of this movie is Max Schreck, who is just really giving it his all here. There's something naturally alarming and eerie about Christopher Walken. You don't even have to bring the guy to hair and makeup, just press record, he's already frightening.
Those cold, dead eyes.
Although the fact that they did bring him to hair and makeup does help make him feel more like a character and less like Christopher Walken. In this movie, Max Schreck is an evil business tycoon. Not to be confused with the other Max Schreck, who is a famous actor and a possible real-life vampire, if I am to believe the movie that I watched. What I love about this is that the character's aesthetic is like the personification of Tim Burton. There's something formal yet spooky about it. He works perfectly in the world that Tim set up here, but you could just as easily plop him into The Nightmare Before Christmas and he'd still fit in. The way he nonchalantly murders his assistant, secretary, without any hesitation really just highlights how cutthroat he is. The movie, while clearly painting him as a selfish, greedy, careless, calculating madman, doesn't make the character entirely heartless. He's motivated by the love of his family, namely his son. His plan to suck the power out of Gotham City, yeah, I know what I said, and I know what it sounded like, I'm not correcting it. His plan is all for the benefit of his adult kid, Chip. He also later successfully convinces the Penguin to take him captive as opposed to his kid. I don't know how often this is brought up, but I really love that the guy playing Chip is doing a really, really awful Christopher Walken impression the whole movie. You know, just to sell the fact that he's his son. That's amazing. I love it. I forget about this fact every time I watch this movie, so every time I'm just as surprised that he's trying to sound like Christopher Walken, but instead he sounds like your annoying friend back in high school who thought he had the most amazing Christopher Walken impersonation, and it was terrible. Maybe I just had that friend. We're not friends anymore. It might surprise you to know that for as much attention and screen time that's given to this guy, he's not actually a character from the comics at all. And surprisingly, still to this day, he hasn't shown up in one, outside of the comic book adaptation of Batman Returns, which is a real shame if you ask me. The character was originally intended to appear in the animated series, but he was changed to Roland Daggett at last minute, who was also a character who did not exist and only served as a replacement for Max Schreck, and then that character would ironically be reused and recycled in the Dark Knight trilogy, though his first name would be changed, so you know, it's a whole thing. Anyway, my point is, I think it'd be really cool to see other interpretations of this character, or maybe even a return to form in the Batman '89 comic book series. Which, admittedly, might be hard to do considering he's out here looking like a Kentucky Fried bitch.
Wow, looking a little crispy over there, like some chicken fried, mother.
I praised Michael Keaton previously, so I don't want to repeat myself too much here, but I feel that this movie's plot and the dynamics within it really allow him to flex his wings. Cape. Whatever. In the last movie, we really only see him as Batman in and out of the costume, but here I think we actually get a much better view of Bruce Wayne. This movie depicts him as a man, rather than just a Batman. While he's still the dark shadow Gothamites see on alleyway walls at night, and jumping from rooftop to rooftop, the movie lets him be vulnerable, at least in short spurts. We see a moment or two of insecurity or doubt within him.
It's not even accurate. Batman blows it.
We see him get tongue-tied and stumble on his words when he spends time with Selina.
I mistook me for somebody else. Sorry.
You mean mistook me?
I mistook me. Yeah. That's what isn't that what I said?
No, I don't think so.
These scenes on paper could destroy the Batman character, making him come off as an inept goof. But thanks to good writing and a great performance by Michael Keaton, he just comes off, well, like a human being. Which is a pretty pleasant change, at least for me. Batman 89 kind of presented Bruce as a constantly stoic, socially awkward, brilliant outcast. I really enjoy this movie and its interpretation of Bruce Wayne, and I like Michael Keaton's time in the role here much more than I did in the previous movie. I completely understand why he is Batman for so many people.
Because he is Batman, you moron.
He's up there for me, too.
Yeah.
The connection with Selina really does add a lot to his character. Once again, unlike Vicky, who just added more to the movie's runtime. I think one of my biggest gripes with this movie, though, is that there's so many characters from the last movie that are completely missing in action here. And yeah, sure, I'm not going to exactly shed any tears over not seeing Vicky Vale again. But do you really mean to tell me that there's no room in this story for Knox and Harvey Dent? I'm not even saying to include them in a huge role, but like, just have them exist. Commissioner Gordon and Alfred are basically reduced to background characters in the plot, but at least they're there. You mean to tell me you couldn't find somewhere to put Harvey? We have all these scenes with elected officials and mayors and whatnot, and you couldn't put Harvey Dent somewhere in that scene? And what about Knox? You mean to tell me you couldn't find a spot for him? The press are all over this movie. You couldn't have just stuck him in somewhere? I'm not saying make him the movie, but like a cameo would be nice. And speaking of cameos from Knox...
Hello, V. This is Robert Wall, and thank you for asking about me. I appreciate that. I hope all is well with you and you're safe and well, as is your family. Your question about how did I feel not being included in Batman Returns? Well, I was disappointed. I really was, for a lot of reasons. Yes, I would have come back disaster, absolutely. Disappointed for a number of reasons. One is I loved working with Tim Burton. I loved working with Michael. I had a great time on Batman. Also, from a financial point of view, it would have been nice. But I guess they just didn't have the part for me. They just didn't have it. So you have to, what they say, life is not fair, get over it. So that's a true answer to your question. However, I will say this about the first Batman series, and I'm going to say the series, pardon me, I'm going to say starting with Batman 1, through Batman Returns, and then through the Joel Schumacher debacle. I always felt if you put them back to back to back to back to back, now I'm not talking about the Dark Knight series, I'm just talking about that first incarnation. If you put them back to back to back to back, I always felt that every hour of the series gets progressively worse. I really do. The first hour of the first Batman, I think, is really outstanding. The second hour is pretty damn good. And then Batman Returns, in my opinion, drops it a little bit, a little too dark for my taste. And then the other ones that Joel Schumacher done are unwatchable to me. They get to a point where they're unwatchable. That's just my opinion. Anyway, I want to wish you the very, very best, and be safe and be well. And thank you for asking, V.
I think what I love most about this movie, though, is not only the characters that it creates, but the relationships it sets up between these characters. The dueling dualities of Batman and Bruce Wayne, or Catwoman and Selina Kyle. The Penguin's perverse pursuit of Catwoman. Shrek's use of Oswald to further his own agendas. The tragic love of Bruce and Selina. The contempt that city officials have for Max Shreck privately, all while they publicly sing his praises. The movie is chock full of interesting connections. Not all of them are given a whole lot of attention, but they're equally evident, regardless. Batman Returns also has a bunch of brilliant moments that I think are either forgotten or just go unmentioned. For example, having Bruce and Selina show up to the Gotham Ball without costumes, because they're always in costume, is a really nice touch. Dressing up normally is just the same as putting on a mask for these people. These are their outfits, because at their cores, they are Batman and Catwoman. It's a real interesting scene. And while they come off as the only two ordinary people in a room full of costumed characters, we know that normally that's not the case. And while what they're wearing would typically have them fade into the background, because everyone's dressing up for Halloween in December, the focus is entirely on them. This scene is a perfect portrait of the Bruce and Selina romance. Another thing that I really like about this movie is that, as opposed to try and make Batman realistic, like how the Nolan movies did, they instead made a realistic Batman movie. That may sound weird, but hear me out. What I mean by that is that instead of bringing Batman into the real world and trying to figure out how all these heroes and villains could be applied to some realm of reality, this movie instead took the world of Batman and tried to make it feel as realistic as possible. What would it be like if this was the world? They're not trying to bring Batman into our world, they're trying to make Batman's world feel as real as ours. Yes, this movie doesn't follow the comics. Yes, it makes some interesting new choices and changes, but it keeps the heart of Batman. The characters are different interpretations of the characters that people know, but for the most part, they still come off as those characters. And the characters that do seem unfamiliar either reinvented the wheel in their role, or they're original characters that no one would have been familiar with prior. I love Batman Returns, and for my money, it is the best live-action Batman movie by a long shot. I'm sorry, I know everyone's going to be yelling at me, how do you not understand the brilliance of The Dark Knight? And that's a great movie. It really is. But I think Batman Returns is just a better Batman movie. This film is full of incredible performances. Not only some of the best in all of Batman movies, but some of the best in all comic book movies. Its tone perfectly matches the hero who is so often called the Dark Knight. The story is well told, the characters' motivations are clear, and while you can't condone their actions, you do understand why they're acting out. So that's why my pick for the best Batman movie is Batman Returns. With that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, VInfuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was VInfuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.
Boo this man!
Why is there always someone who brings eggs and tomatoes to a speech?